Greetings, classmates. It's Mitchell Vanlings, video number 2 for class 430 AVI A430. This is the football multi-engine trip. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the demonstration of SRM. So SRM is a single pilot resource management. And so the things we're going to discuss are the managing all resources available. So managing all resources available would be using the nav aids in the aircraft, like the VOR, the GPS, along with ForeFlight for your flight planning, weather briefings, and the proper use of automation management in flight. So setting up your flight plan on your 430 in your aircraft or whatever GPS you have, or if you don't, you're flying VORs the whole way. And also setting up ForeFlight, your flight plan from Minneapolis to Meacham Field and in the Fort Worth area. I chose Meacham just because it's a pretty quiet airport on the north side of Fort Worth. And my flight plan says it would take 4 hours and 2 minutes, 742 nautical miles, and a Baron 58. Okay, so the areas of risk and decisions managing situations. The weather out of the Minneapolis area right now is low IFR, so we'd have to wait and take off. I'm not going to take off in a piston engine airplane in low IFR. The area down in the Fort Worth area is pretty decent, mostly VFRs, a couple areas of passing clouds. Task management through the flight is going to be mostly the pilot's duties, and I will pass on some of the duties to the co-pilot. One of the friends along is really inquisitive, so we'll let them run the checklist and give them something to do to keep them busy. Okay, and then the use of aeronautical decision making. We'll discuss that at the end. My thoughts on aeronautical decision making. And CFIT, compliant into terrain. There's not really any mountainous areas. It will be high, like 12,500 feet for the flight down, depending on weather, of course. But probably 10.5. It's better, safer for oxygen limits, oxygen requirements. So next we're going to talk about multi-engine systems. So multi-engine aircraft have redundancy of lots of systems on the airplanes, but things like landing gear, brakes, those are only one system for the airplane. So the landing gear, you have a pump and actuators, and select your handles and select the handle up. The gear, activates the hydraulic pump or the electric motor, and the gears come up. And same with going down. And typically, your gear speed is just a little bit higher than your flap speed. Or some airplanes, its flap speed's higher than the gear speed, so it just depends on what airplane you have. And then brake system components, you have typically one hydraulic system powering both sides of the Brable, left and right brakes. So the main benefit of a multi-engine airplane is there's 2 engines, and so the redundancy of having a second motor is definitely a plus when you're on a long cross country. Gives you more options and places to land. Fuel system components, or the propeller components, you have two constant speed propellers on a Baron 58, and setting those for cruise flight gives you the best efficiency and fuel burn once you lean out the engine. And fuel systems get fuel in the tanks and the wing tanks, 4 tanks, and you can burn either engine from either tank or both. Crossfeed. You can crossfeed the fuel to whichever engine. And it's electrical systems. You have dual alternators. So if you lose one, you still have another backup to power the battery to keep your avionics going for that much longer. Avionics systems I like to have a 430 in an airplane, especially for long cross countries. It makes it nice for setting it up and being able to shoot an approach with LPV. VNAV LPV approach if ILS is not available. And environmental systems, heating system. The heating system is run by ducted air from the muffler system and has heat exchangers in the engine compartment, which basically take outside ambient cold air and run it by the hot exhaust and then pump it in, and it flows into the cabin. That's the heating and the cooling. And this aircraft is just open the vents and turn off the heat. That's your cooling. No pressurization in this bearing. No de-ice. And the anti-ice system, only anti-ice system available is on the pitot static probe, or the pitot probe. No airframe, propeller, or windshield anti-ice available. And then the flight control surfaces, the trim tabs and on the bearing, just regular running. Sorry, my phone had a glitch. Regular trim tabs and normal flaps and ailerons. Okay, so emergency procedures. We'll brief all the emergency procedures and go through all these while we're in our brief before takeoff, and just so we can talk about it, and so the passengers know what's going on. And precautionary landing with power and without power. If we have an engine problem, we'll make a precautionary landing at an airport, a suitable airport, and we'll, contact ATC and have them help us get in. If we have an engine out, we lose both engines, have a fuel problem or something like that, we'll get down to the altitude and get to the nearest airport that we could possibly land, or even a road if there's no airports around. So aeronautical decision making. The aeronautical decision making is a big deal for single pilot operations, using the PAVE and DECIDE and the 5 Ps. So the PAVE is the pilot, the aircraft, the environment, and external pressures, and the 5 Ps are the plan, the plane, the pilot, passengers, and the programming. So getting all that stuff together. And then assessing the risk in the situation is part of the risk hazards. So you identify the hazards, identify the risks, implement controls, and accept the risk as whatever level it's using a risk assessment tool. So identifying the hazards, implement controls, and then accepting whatever risk that you end up with. Okay, thank you very much. It's been my presentation for AVI A430.